The rain began without warning, tapping hard against the windows of Emma Carter's townhouse in Portland. It was early evening, the kind of hour where daylight still lingered but felt unsure of itself. Emma stood near the sink, staring at nothing, holding a mug she had already forgotten to drink from. Her house was clean, quiet, and lonely in a way that felt heavier than usual. Something in the air felt different, as if the night was holding its breath. Emma was 38 and had learned how to live alone, but that did not mean she enjoyed it. Her divorce had been calm on the surface and painful underneath. There had been no shouting at the end, only distance, long silences, and the slow understanding that love had left the room. Since then, she had built a careful life. Work, routines, and polite smiles kept her moving forward. Still, there were moments when memories returned without asking. She checked her phone. No messages. She placed it face down on the counter and tried to focus on the sound of the rain. Outside, cars passed with soft splashes, people heading home to families or partners. Emma wondered, not for the first time, if she had waited too long to start over. Across town, Daniel Brooks sat in his car with the engine off, staring at the front of Emma's house. The porch light glowed warm against the dark street. His hands rested on the steering wheel, but his mind raced. Turning the car around would be easy. Knocking on the door would not. Daniel was 42, tall and calm, in a way that came from experience rather than confidence. 2 years had passed since he lost his wife, yet the pain still lived close to the surface. Grief had changed him, had made him quieter, more careful, and deeply aware of time. He no longer believed life waited for anyone to be ready. He had told himself he was only stopping by to check on Emma. They worked together once, long before their lives shifted. Over time, work had turned into friendship, and friendship into something softer. They never named it. They didn't need to. Lived in long conversations, shared lunches. And the way their eyes searched for each other in a room, Daniel stepped out of the car. The rain soaked his jacket instantly. He walked to the door, paused, then knocked. Inside, Emma flinched at the sound. She wasn't expecting anyone. Her first thought was that something was wrong. When she opened the door and saw Daniel, surprise crossed her face, followed by concern. "Daniel," she said, "are you okay?" "I think so," he replied, though he wasn't sure. "I just didn't want to be alone tonight." She stepped aside without thinking. The door closed behind him, and the quiet returned. But it felt different now, alive. They stood facing each other, unsure where to begin. Daniel removed his jacket, placing it over a chair. Emma noticed his tired eyes, the lines that grief had carved into his face. He noticed how her hair was loosely tied, how she looked softer at home, more real. They moved to the living room and sat on the couch, leaving a careful space between them. The rain grew louder, filling the pauses in their conversation. Offered wine, Daniel accepted. Their hands almost touched as she passed him the glass, and both noticed they spoke about simple things. Work stress, a project that had gone wrong, a book Emma was trying to finish. Daniel listened closely, as he always did. Emma felt herself relax, the tension in her shoulders easing. Then the conversation slowed, drifting into deeper waters. "I still have days where it hits me out of nowhere," Daniel said quietly. "The loss, the silence." Emma nodded. "I understand that more than I wish I did." She told him about the nights she woke up reaching for someone who wasn't there, the fear that she might never feel deeply again. Daniel told her about the guilt that followed every moment of happiness, as if joy were a betrayal. Neither of them rushed the words. They let them fall naturally, without trying to fix each other. At one point, Emma laughed softly at something Daniel said, then stopped. Embarrassed. "I forgot what it feels like to laugh without forcing it." Daniel looked at her, his expression gentle. "You deserve that." The room felt smaller, warmer. The space between them shrank without either of them moving. Emma could feel his presence, steady and grounding. Daniel felt drawn to her in a way that felt both comforting and frightening. "I've been trying to convince myself I'm ready to move on," Emma said. "But I don't know if that's true." Daniel swallowed. "I don't think anyone is ever fully ready." Silence followed. Not awkward. Honest. Daniel's hand rested on his knee, close to Emma's. He didn't move it. Emma noticed anyway. Her heart beat faster, not from fear, but from recognition. This feeling wasn't new. They had been circling it for months. Daniel finally spoke, his voice low. "I don't want to cross a line that hurts you." Emma turned to face him. "I don't want to keep pretending the line isn't there." Their eyes met. The moment stretched. Daniel lifted his hand slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. Their fingers touched, then intertwined, and something shifted inside both of them. It wasn't passion, it was connection. Deep, quiet, and powerful. Emma felt tears gather in her eyes, surprising her. Daniel squeezed her hand gently. "Hey," he said softly, "you don't have to be strong right now." That was all it took. The wall she had built cracked, just enough to let feeling through. She leaned closer, resting her head briefly against his shoulder. Daniel stayed still, breathing carefully, afraid to break the moment. They stayed like that for a long time. Listening to the rain, sharing warmth without words. It felt right in a way that scared them both. Eventually, Emma pulled back. "This feels big," she said. Daniel nodded. "It does. I don't know where it leads." "I don't either." The honesty mattered. They weren't making promises. They weren't rushing. They were simply acknowledging what was already there. Daniel glanced at the clock. It was late. He stood reluctant. "I should go." Emma walked him to the door. The porch light cast soft shadows across his face. 4. A moment it seemed like he might say something more. Instead, he smiled, small but real. "Thank you for tonight," said. "Thank you for coming," she replied. He stepped into the rain. Then turned back once more, as if memorizing the sight of her. The door closed gently behind him. Emma leaned against it, heart racing. The house felt different now. Not empty. Changed outside. Daniel sat in his car again, rain streaming down the windshield. He didn't start the engine right away. His hand still felt the warmth of hers. For the first time in years, the future didn't feel closed. Neither of them knew what would come next. They only knew that something had begun quietly and unexpectedly. On a rainy night when neither wanted to be alone, and that knowledge followed them both into the darkness, refusing to be ignored. Emma woke the next morning to the soft sound of rain against the windows, though it was lighter now, more like a whisper. She lay in bed for a few moments, thinking about last night, about Daniel, about the strange weight of hope that had settled in her chest. The memory of his hand brushing hers, the quiet comfort in his presence, made her stomach flutter and her heart ache all at once. She wasn't used to feeling so alive, so unsettled, so uncertain. And yet there was a warmth she hadn't felt in years. One that made the silence of her home feel less lonely. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She picked it up with hesitant fingers, heart beating faster than it had for months. It was Daniel. "Daniel, I didn't regret last night, but I'm scared of what it means." Emma stared at the screen. His words were simple, but they carried everything: the fear, the longing, the possibility. She took a deep breath before replying, typing slowly, as if each letter had weight. "Emma." "Me too." The response hung in the air as if acknowledging it. A loud could change everything. She put the phone down and stared out the window at the rain-soaked street. Life had a way of moving forward, no matter what her heart whispered. She knew that. But some truths, some emotions, refused to be ignored by mid-morning. She made herself a cup of coffee, pacing lightly around the kitchen. She replayed Daniel's words in her mind, felt the gentle pressure of his hand again, and realized how much she had missed physical closeness, not sex. Not passion, but touch. Reassurance, the subtle warmth of another human being who truly cared. Her divorce had taught her independence, but now independence felt lonely, and she wasn't ready to give up the warmth she had felt last night. Meanwhile, Daniel sat in his small apartment across town. The memory of Emma leaning her head on his shoulder stayed with him like a quiet echo. He had driven home in the rain, soaked to the bone, yet none of that mattered. He replayed the moment again and again, wondering if he was foolish for letting himself feel this way. He hadn't expected it, hadn't planned for it, and certainly hadn't thought he would allow himself hope. But there it was, insistent, undeniable. A few days passed before they spoke again in person. They decided on coffee by the river, a neutral place that offered space and light. The air was crisp, carrying the faint smell of rain-soaked earth. And the wide blue sky stretched above them like an invitation to begin anew. They sat at a small table outside the cafe, though neither drank much. Conversation started lightly, but the silence between them was heavy with unspoken words. Emma spoke first. "I don't want to replace anyone in your life," she said carefully, "and I don't want anyone to replace me either." Daniel's hands tightened around his cup. "I know," he said. "I just don't want to keep living half a life." The truth of that statement lingered between them. They were careful, older, scarred, aware that life didn't offer second chances easily. And yet here they were, both wanting something fragile and rare. They didn't need to define it with labels, didn't need promises yet. All that mattered was the honesty between them, the willingness to show up despite fear. In the following weeks, their connection grew slowly. They went for walks instead of traditional dates, talking about books, movies, childhood memories, and the absurdities of life. They laughed more than they had in years, though sometimes the laughter faded into thoughtful silence. Some evenings, Emma would pull back, unsure if she could allow herself happiness. Some mornings, Daniel would wake with guilt, haunted by the thought that feeling joy again might be wrong. But they kept returning to each other. Always one Saturday. Daniel suggested a walk along the river trail. The sun was beginning its descent, casting gold and rose across the water. They walked side by side, not touching, but feeling each other's presence in small ways. A stray leaf drifted past, catching Emma's attention, and she smiled at its simplicity. Daniel noticed the smile, and it struck him how easily she could still find joy in small things. "I'm scared," Emma admitted suddenly, stopping in her tracks. "Scared of losing myself again?" Daniel reached out, gently resting his hand on her shoulder. "You won't," he said. "We'll figure it out together. No rush, no pressure. Just this." She looked at him, and for the first time, she allowed herself to hope that maybe love didn't have to hurt to be real. That maybe, after pain, hearts could heal, slowly but surely. With the right person, they continued walking, letting the rhythm of their steps match the quiet current of the river. Words weren't always necessary. Sometimes, the connection spoke louder than any sentence. Daniel occasionally brushed against her hand, never forcing it, always waiting for her to respond. Emma allowed it, savoring the touch, the reassurance. That she was not alone. As weeks turned into months, their bond deepened. They learned each other's habits, quirks, fears, and joys. They shared dreams of quiet weekends, evenings spent cooking together, and long drives with no destination. They laughed at the absurdities of life, comforted each other through lingering pain, and discovered that companionship could be both gentle and exhilarating. One evening, they found themselves standing on the riverbank at sunset. The sky was painted in shades of orange, pink, and purple, reflecting in the rippling water. Daniel finally broke the silence. "I don't know how this ends," he said, voice low, sincere. "But I know I don't want to walk away." Emma felt tears prick her eyes, not from sadness, but from relief, from recognition that she felt the same way. "Neither do I," she whispered. They didn't kiss that evening. They didn't need to. Instead, they stood side by side, watching. The river flowed forward, understanding that the current of life always moved. Sometimes slowly, sometimes violently, but always forward. Their hearts were healing, learning to trust, learning to feel again. The unusual situation that had begun on a rainy night months ago had shifted their lives in quiet, unremarkable ways that were extraordinary. It wasn't a whirlwind romance, not an instant fix to old wounds, but a steady, delicate rebuilding of something they both thought they might never feel again. Every touch, every shared glance, every quiet moment reminded them that love could be simple, patient, and profound. Fear still lingered, scars still remained, but hope had returned, fragile and bright, refusing to be ignored. And in that slow, careful unfolding, Emma and Daniel realized that sometimes the most unusual situations are the ones that teach the heart to beat again, not with recklessness, but with quiet courage and tenderness. They stood there until the last light disappeared behind the horizon, not needing to speak. The river moved forward. They moved forward. And in each other, they found the unusual, beautiful possibility of a new beginning.